I want to talk today about symbols, and I want to chat about the symbol of the scales. This, in other words. And the symbol of the scales, like think about if you were to suddenly walk into an experimental lab with all of these little technical things going on, people at the computer doing, conducting the data for the experiment that they were doing, putting in that information, people writing down on papers, making that little chart going over the pros and cons of the experiment after they have developed their hypothesis. And in their minds, they are balancing out the pros and the cons of the results of that they're going to be reaping of this sort of experiment. But it's just so fitting, and it really, really does pair well with what they're doing because, in fact, they are testing out a new object. Let's pretend that the scale has not existed yet, and they're testing it out by putting one small bag of peanuts and another small bag of pistachios on this sort of scale, and they're measuring it out. And as they do this, they notice that let's say the pistachios rise above the peanuts. And so that scale would be not in balance because of this sort of one being above the other, one outweighing the other. Because if you think about it, if you have this scale and something does not measure equally to the other thing on the other pan, then it rises higher up in the air, therefore it lowers down the other one. So what happens is you have your little pole and you have your little strings, and then the pans, which are connected and below directly on those strings at the bottom little, dot of that bottom of the string connected. And then it either tilts this way or that way. So this, with my hands, see what I'm doing? This is obviously outweighing and going way above this. So that is what it would indicate. That is what it would indicate. The idea to have it perfectly in balance, to have these two things in balance, to be very, very analytical and very judgmental and very like a connoisseur of how well these two things balance out. How in balance and in alignment is one pan to the other pan, not outweighing the other. Now, indeed, this is very, very symbolic for many, many situations of life. Now, for example, you could have a wife and a husband, for example. The wife would do a lot of the work, a lot of the housework, a lot of the, the cooking and the cleaning and the dusting and, dampening of the things which need dampening and need moisture to go into those things. Making the beds, managing the firms and the taxes, the money, the insurance, making sure that the door is working properly, making sure that the meal is coming along swimmingly, that everything is balanced, while the husband, let's say, is the CEO of a major company who comes home and feels very, very entitled where he doesn't have to lift a finger and do any work, really. And so he just sits down in the living room, let's say, watches SpongeBob, or in this case, watches CNN, the nightly news, and sits down reading his Barbara Cartland. I don't know what that means. Well, whatever novel, whatever, like the Financial Times, let's just say. And he sits down, chillaxes, relaxes, takes the power naps that he needs to take, while the wife is slaving away doing all the work. This is imbalance, and she really, really looked at that pendulum swing, which could really, really just swing over to something which would be a negative attraction, and the relationship would have a little bit of a rough patch that needs to be healed over and mending, a card from the Wisdom of the Woto deck, Wisdom of the Oracle, needs to be mended, needs to be fixed or healed, needs to be talked about. Because the sign that is represented of the scale is Libra, and it is all about maintaining the balanced relationships. I do my bit, you do your bit. It's a give and take. But the thing is that Libra really, really needs to work on not bowing down to a king or queen that Libra does not believe in and feel loyal to, not bending over backwards and sacrificing their individuality and not forging their signature for the benefit of their non-identical twin to be able to hand the quiz to the teacher, because, well, this is my mom's handwriting that she signed on a quiz that I failed, and it was actually not. It was actually my sister's, and then what always happens in the dark does come to light. And the mother found out, and then they were punished, and they were grounded. They were put down to earth like, no, you can't do that. You did wrong, says the Bell woman who lived with her. I don't remember her name, but if you've seen Raven's Home, then you know who I'm talking about. But this is sort of just the real need to please, the real need to think about the other as opposed to thinking about yourself. So the ultimate balance, and is balancing the self with the other, and too often Libra can put the other, above themselves, like, the saying, put your own oxygen mask on before you can help others. That way you're taken care of, you're well filled up. I have a live stream on people pleasing that you can go watch. Now, another symbol is the teeter-totter, which is a very, very important one. The teeter-totter, you're going one way and it goes into the ground, which is like a, rocky, sandy ground. And of course you can't, go into the ground and go into the earth, unless you're in Everlost and you were to just sink down to the bottom of the earth, maybe the center of the earth. But it stops there, and you have to go the other way, just like the lunar nodes, just like the south node, north node, where you're coming from, where you're going, the dragon's head and the dragon's tail, not putting one above the other. It's not black and white this way or that way. It's not all left brain and not any right brain. It's not all liberal and all conservative. There is a middle ground. There is that middle way that you would directly go across on your path to Southampton or your path to Rome, because let's face it, all roads lead to Rome, right? And you would go somewhere in the middle. You would find the middle ground. And indeed, in the heavens, we are learning to balance the intellect, the mind, the logic, the data, the information, the quirkiness of Aquarius with the dreaminess and the mysticism and the the shelf with the books, which can really, really take us into another world and escaping the mundane reality. It's this sort of balance that we all need to cultivate, that we all need to, and the balance I am giving to you now. I am just letting go and discerning naturally what I should and shouldn't say. I am balancing the imagination and creative qualities of Pisces with the logic and intellectual information of Aquarius. Now, Keep in mind that Libra is the sign which is represented by the only non-living object. All the other signs have objects which are living, some animals, some like a water nymph or water maiden for Aquarius, and so many of those types of things. But this is so important, this symbol of the scales. Balancing ourselves and the others, sometimes putting ourselves first, and knowing the balance. It's not either or, it is both and both and is the really, really key words for this balance. The key words when you are sitting on a bicycle built for two, and you both can enjoy the experience of riding along the beautiful scenery with the flowers and the trees and hearing the birds, and you're sharing that connection, and you're balancing, and each person does their bit. No one does more labor than another. It's all contributing. Yes, indeed. That is the scale symbolism. Thank you for tuning into this video.